A question came up where a user asked how to model this part as sheet metal so that it would unfold, and I believe this is supposed to be a part of a Fender for a motorcycle. This is my solution to the question, and if I go to flat pattern, it does return a flat pattern. And so let's look at how to build this part. So I'm going to start out with a new sketch on the XY plane, and so I'll right click on the XY plane, I'll do a new sketch, and I'm going to draw a line horizontally, and I'm going to make that line 17.525. My advice to beginners is to draw one line or one rectangle or one circle and dimension it immediately to give you a sense of scale for the rest of your project. And so then I'm going to draw a line coming up here at an angle. I'll draw a line at an angle here, and I'll draw a line horizontally to about there, and I'll come back down to that location. I'm then going to dimension the distance from this line down to the origin, and I'm going to do that dimension as 3.5, and then I'm going to dimension the distance from here over to the origin horizontally, and I'm going to do that as 0.776. Now if these dimensions, if you need to change them, it's really easy to just double click on the dimension. I would probably change these dimensions to something that is rounded off, say 0.775, but in any case I'm using the original dimensions. And then I'm going to dimension this one as 1.776, so 1 inch further, and I will dimension the distance from here over to the origin, that distance as 16.776. I will dimension the height from here to here 1.175, and notice my sketch all turns black. It's all fully defined. I'm going to put two more construction lines in here, so I'm going to draw a line from here to about to here and over to here. I want those lines to be construction lines, so I'll select those lines and change those to construction. I will then put some more dimensions on here, so I'm going to dimension from here to here, and I'll do that dimension as 2.5, and dimension from here over to here, and that dimension I'm going to dimension as 1.677, and I'll dimension from here over to here. So I have somewhere that it's not allowing me to dimension that, so I look for a constraint that I didn't intend, and I see this constraint that would put this line perpendicular to that line, which I didn't intend, so I'll delete that constraint, and then I can do the dimension from this point over to this point. Get in the dimension command from this point over to this point, and that distance is 14.177. So here are our dimensions on the first sketch, and then I will start my second sketch. Now what I try to do is use the Bourne technique, that stands for Base Orphan Reference Node, where I, if possible or practical, I do all of my sketches on the origin planes. And so I'm going to start a new sketch on the YZ plane, and I'm going to initially just draw a rectangle out here in space, and I'm going to draw a line across here, and let me dimension this line as 7 inches, and then I'm going to change this geometry to construction geometry, and then I'm going to draw a line from this point up to about here, and then over horizontally and down to here. I also want to come from here down to here, and from here down to here. Alright, I'm going to put a point. Now this isn't really technically needed, but I'm going to put a point right here at the midpoint of this line and a point at the midpoint of that line. Now there is a midpoint constraint that you could use, but I find for beginners it's easier to do this point to this point, and now that's constrained at the center of this 7 inches. I'm then going to do P for project geometry, and I'm going to project this point into my current sketch. I'll project this point into my sketch, and the origin is automatically projected. I'm then going to do coincident, and I'm going to select the midpoint of this line, and this is why, you know, there is a midpoint constraint, but for beginners I prefer to just put a point there, and then do coincident this point to the origin, and I didn't put a point on that line, so let's do a point on this line, and then coincident this point to this projected point, and then this point to this projected point. Alright, and now we need to dimension this point from here over to here. So I'll dimension from here over to here, and that distance is 5 inches. Alright, the sketch turns black. It's all fully defined. I'll finish sketch and I'll save it, and then I'll start a new sketch on the YZ plane. So I'll create a new sketch I'm going to draw a rectangle similar to the way I did in the previous one. I'll draw a line across here. Okay. I'm going to change all of this to construction. I didn't change this one down here. I'll draw a line from here over to about here, over to here, back to here. Now I also want to close this off back to here, and a line from here back to here. I'll then put some points on here, so I'm going to put a midpoint right here. I'll put a midpoint right there, a midpoint right here, and a midpoint right there. I'll do coincident, so this point to this point, and then I'm going to project that point. So let's project a few points down here, but I'm going to put this point to this point. So I'll move that over, and let's do P for project, and let's project this point right here and this point right here. From sketch 1 I got the wrong line. I just wanted that point, and so I have a line there. I'm going to change that to constructions. I'll do coincident, then this point right here, and I thought I projected that point. Be careful when you're projecting it, you don't project something to a 3D sketch, and so I don't see the projection on that. So I'll do P for project again, that point, and then I'll do my coincident. Right. I also want to project this point down here. Now if it's on the same plane, you can just do coincident, but be careful, you could accidentally move something into a 3D sketch. And so I'm expecting these lines to turn black. They're not black, so I'm missing a dimension. So I'll dimension from this point over to this point, and that distance is 5.687. Of course, that's easily editable if that isn't the intended dimension. I will finish this sketch and I'll save it. Alright, so I have the sketches needed to outline my part. So from the front view, the outline of the part's like that. From the right side view, the outline of the part is like that. And then from the top view, the outline of the part is like that. So I have a top, front, and side outline of my part. I'm then going to do extrude, and I'm going to extrude this profile, and I'm going to go a distance of 7 inches. Now we have a dimension on here that's 7 inches. We can set it equal to that parameter. That way this thing will update, and so I may or may not do that at the end. So let's tell this to go symmetric. I'll say OK to that, and so I have the start of my geometry. I'll do extrude again. I'm going to set it to go through all, and want the intersection. I'll say OK to that, so it cuts off this corner and this corner. I'll do another extrude, and this time I'm going to tell it to go through all again, and I'll tell it to do the intersection again, and so it's going to go up and cut this corner and this corner off over here. Alright, I did something right. I'll save it. Okay, now I need to create a couple of 3-point work planes. So I'm going to do a 3-point work plane. I'm going to do it from this point to this point, up to this point. I'll say OK to that, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we could have maybe done this as 1/2 of it and then mirrored, but I'll go ahead and do this 3 points from this point to this point, up to this point. I'll say OK to that, and then I'm going to use these planes to split away the excess that's on this side of the plane and on the other side. So I'll do split. I'm asked to select the body to split. I want to split this body, and then I'll select the splitting tools. I'm going to select this surface, and I'll select that surface. And actually it looks like I'm going to have to do these one at a time. So I'll control unselect this one, and I'll go ahead and say OK to that one, and then I'll do the split again. So I'll do split body, and I'll select this body to split, and I want to split it with this tool, and I'll say OK to that. I'll turn off the visibility of the construction work planes, and then over here under bodies, I don't need this body. I want to remove that, so I'll do remove, and I want that body. I don't need this body, so I'll right click and I'll remove that body. Alright, so there's my basic shape from the original definition of the problem, and now I want to put some fillets on here. And so I'm going to do fillet. I'm going to put some fillets in for my bends. And so first we need to do some thinking about where we are going to bend this sheet metal part at. And so I'm going to bend it along those edges, along this edge, and along this edge over here, and along this edge. Okay, I'm going to do that at 0.125. And then I need to add some rips. Let me go back and edit that feature. And so I'll edit that feature, and I'll add additional bends. And these will be for the rips. So I'm going to select this edge and this edge. I will select this edge and this edge. And I'm going to add these two out here in the front separately. So let's do those as 0.0625. Okay, so got put these fillets in these corners. And so let me do one more fillet. I'm going to select this edge and this edge, and do those as 0.0625. So the most efficient and easy way of getting this sheet metal part is to use some hybrid techniques. And so let's look at how to do these hybrid techniques. I'm going to go to the surface tools, and I'm going to select delete, and I'm going to delete this face and this face. Now shell won't work on something like this, so don't be tempted to use shell. And I'm going to delete this face, so these are my rips. This is a rip in here, there's a rip, and I need to come up here and delete that face, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. I want to delete this face, and this face is a rip, and this face. Alright, I'm also going to rip it in these corners, so I'm going to select this face here and here to rip that corner, and I'm going to select this face, and this face to rip that corner. Alright, so we have infinitely thin surface body now, and then we need to convert this into a sheet metal part. Now I'm going to go to sheet metal, and I'll start a new sketch on this face, and then I'm going to do P for project, and I'll select that face. I want to project that entire face, and I'll finish this sketch, and then I'm going to create a flange, and I'll select that face, and it's going up. I want it to go down, so I'll select side 2. And for now, when I select my sheet metal style, I'm going to select this steel 1/4, but then we're going to change that to 1/16. And so we'll say OK to that. So let's come up here, and I'm going to go to modify, and that steel 1/4, I'm going to edit that, and let's call this steel 1/16, or whatever your sheet metal thickness is, and I'll make that 0.0625. Close that. And so we'll come over here. So now we see that that is our style that I'm using, and it also, when I did that, it changed my thickness of my part to a 1/16 of an inch thickness. And then I'm going to go back to the surface modeling tools, and I'm going to say create a thicken, and I will select this surface, and I want to go 1/16, and I'm going to go minus 0.0625, and later we can change that to the parameter of our sheet metal style, so that if we make any changes, that will automatically update. I want to join that to my sheet metal part, so I'll say OK to that. And so now we have our sheet metal part. We need to test it out, so we'll go back to sheet metal, and we will select the create flat pattern. It asks me to select a stationary face. I'll select that face, and there is my flat pattern for the part. So we've got this done. So I'll finish flat pattern, and I'm going to go back to my second sketch, and I'll edit that sketch, and I see that this dimension is D10. Alright, so that dimension is D10. I'll go to my first extrusion, and I'm going to edit that feature, and I'm going to set this distance in. Instead of typing in that 7 inches, I'll set that as D10. Alright, so now if I should change the original width of the part, this will update. I'm also going to find out, I want to go to the parameters, and I want to find out what the parameter is for my sheet metal thickness. So I see that the parameter for sheet metal thickness is D20. Okay, so I'm going to edit fillet, and I'm going to set this as D20 times 2. So that's the outside radius, and then for the rips, I'll set that as D20 for the thickness of the material. So if I change the thickness of the material within reason, that should update. I also have a second fillet that I did separately, so I need to do that one. So I'll edit that feature, and I'll set that to D20. Now you could give the variables a name, so you could just type in the name, and that way you don't have to know what that D number is. But in any case, that is a simple sheet metal part. It would be really complicated, and if somebody can do it, I would love to see an example using just standard sheet metal tools and not using a hybrid technique as I did. So there's the part.